Thank you all for joining us today. We are going to be talking a little bit about Accudemia surveys, and then we will be moving on to talk about some of the new updates in Accudemia. And of course, we will have our Q&A as well. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started now. I know we have a little bit of housekeeping to get through before we get started. So let's start with our agenda, just a brief overview of that. We will start with my best practices presentation. I'm going to be talking about surveys in Accudemia, some tips and tricks for that, both for myself and from some Accudemia users. Then our team will cover last month's update. Our support team will cover last month's updates in Accudemia. And then, of course, we will have our Q&A session. All right, we do have a few announcements before we get started. I want to just kind of start off. I want to start off by making sure everybody knows about our upcoming Academic Center Summit. This is our live conference that is going to be taking place February 7th through 9th, 2027 in Orlando. This is going to be our third time hosting this event. It is a combination of professional development for Learning Center folks and Accudemia training. So whether you're using Accudemia or feel like you're kind of up to date on it and would like to just do some general professional development, we have that as well. We just booked our keynote speaker for the event, so we'll be making a formal announcement about that soon, but we can now tell you that our keynote speaker is going to be Jennifer Haley from the Claudia organization, so we are very excited to be hosting her as our keynote speaker. And we are accepting applications for breakout sessions if you are interested in presenting at the conference. So I will paste those links in the chat in just a moment. We really hope to see you there. It is a lot of fun. It is a really, really invigorating event. It's near our company headquarters. You get to meet the Accudemia team. You get to meet lots of folks from working in learning centers around the country. So we really, really hope to see you there. The next announcement is our keynote webinar. We host these once a month. These are free to attend. They are professional development webinars for folks working in learning centers. So our next speaker is going to be Stephanie Walker, and she's going to be presenting on Thursday, June 24th. And she's from the University of Michigan, and her topic is Daring to be a Wholehearted Supervisor, Practical Supervision Tools for Navigating Challenges and Strengthening Relationships. So be prepared to get some really great tips on how to best approach supervising, some good tools for your toolkit. Definitely hope to see you there. And again, that is free to sign up. And we do have limited space, so we encourage you to sign up as soon as you are available to. All right. With that out of the way, I am going to go ahead and jump right into my best practices presentation. My name is Rachel. I'm a customer success manager with Accudemia. I have worked with the company for a number of years now, a returning employee after a couple years away, and I work very, very closely with Accudemia and with its users. I have a background in higher education as a learning center manager myself, so I kind of come at this from both sides of that coin, and my goal is to help Accudemia users make the most out of their software. So doing these best practices presentation is just a good extension of that, and just kind of talking about not the technical aspects of an Accudemia feature, but how to get the most out of it as an end user. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today with a really great feature called surveys. So many of you are probably aware that we have surveys in Accudemia, but you might not be actually using it or not sure how to best use it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I don't want to get into a technical demonstration. We have those on our website. We can link those to you if you're interested, and make those available in terms of like the actual how to set up a survey and all that good stuff. But just a kind of brief overview, if you're not hugely familiar with it, just a few points that I wanted to make sure are clear before we move into actual tips and tricks. So the first thing that I want to point out about the surveys is that at its core, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a customizable questionnaire for collecting feedback from users, most often students. That is the most popular use case of surveys. I've spoken to very few users who use it it for polling faculty or staff, for example. But that is possible. That is definitely a function of those of that survey feature. So, and it can be triggered automatically. So that means that based on certain actions that users take within Accudemia, you can set the survey to run. This is usually either checking in or out of a kiosk or logging into Accudemia from the back end. But surveys can also be sent manually, either to individuals or to user groups. Again, mostly user groups that we find being sent surveys are student groups, but it's not limited to just that. Users may fill out the survey at the kiosk, especially if the survey was triggered by using the kiosk, or they can use their own device, their own laptop, their own phone to fill out the survey by logging into Accudemia from the back end. So that is a more convenient option. Filling it out, having them fill it out at the survey, the advantage there is that they're right there. You know they are going to go ahead and fill that out right there, but it can create bottlenecks. It can create frustration. We're going to get into a little bit about how to try to minimize that frustration and increase your chances of students filling those out. There's kind of pros and cons to both. Adding the ability for students or for users to be able to fill out the surveys from their own device became really important during the pandemic when most centers went virtual and just weren't running kiosks. They were having to track those students in other ways. You have a couple different options there for how students actually fill out those surveys. And then, so they are triggered based on actions. They can be triggered based on actions, but whether or not they are triggered can depend on a few factors. You can make it location dependent. So if they're using a specific location, they can it can be triggered based on a service that they selected at a specific location, or a tutor or staff member that they signed in with. So if you're trying to get feedback on specific aspects of your services, that can be a really good way to do that. Also, the course that the student receives assistance for, if it's a student-facing survey. So if you want to get feedback on specific courses or services for specific courses, you can do that as well. Responses can be forced. They don't have to be, but forcing means that the student basically can't do anything else in Accudemia until they fill out that survey. And you can trigger them to run multiple times. So you can trigger them to run every third visit, every second visit, fifth visit, every visit. We'll talk a little bit more about why we don't necessarily recommend that in all cases. You definitely want to be conservative with that, but that is possible to have a survey run multiple times for the same person. And then we also, of course, have reports. We love our reports in Accudemia. Those can show both anonymous results and they can also show results with names and associated visit details, excuse me, if applicable. So you can either have completely anonymous results, or if you want to kind of dig down into specific sessions, you can do that as well. So let's talk a little bit about what do we see surveys used for, and what are some ways we can make that maybe work a little bit better for you. So how was your visit? And I titled the slide this because this is the most common use case. Users are asked about their experience with a visitor center. I'm sure many of you, even if you don't run surveys through Accudemia, have run similar surveys in your center at one point or another. And the biggest thing I hear from folks is students just don't tend to take these surveys. For whatever reason, they're in a hurry. They don't see it. They don't, their experience, they don't feel is significant enough to warrant taking the time to do that. But this is probably hands down the most common way that surveys both in and out of Accudemia are utilized in learning centers. So the question is, how do we go beyond that to gather actionable insights? We're not just trying to find out, how did it go? Was it good? Was it bad? Yes or no? We want to actually use this data alongside all the other great data that we're gathering from Accudemia and from potentially other sources to get a full picture of the student experience. And then a good way to think of this is to look at it less of a survey and more of like an outcome check. So asking a question at checkout, for example, do you feel more comfortable about this topic? And that can be a good way to bring in course specific surveys, and kind of or subject or service specific surveys, to kind of really drill down into, our students maybe are traditionally struggling with this subject or this service. After these lessons, after these sessions, do they feel more comfortable? And then asking them later, we can also consider, did you successfully complete your assignment? So, um, did uh, did you end up following through with this? So we're trying to get a fuller picture of the student's academic journey. And then after multiple visits, that could be a good time. And remember, you can have more than one survey running at a time. So you can ask them later on, or if you choose to ask these questions that are earlier in the list and ask this bottom one, or if you just want to focus on one or two, that's all right too. Asking them, are you still struggling with this course? So trying to identify, you know, in the short term, were we able to help them, but in the long term as well, are we giving them foundations that are going to follow them throughout the rest of the semester? And then, if possible, take action on the data. For example, routing concerning responses to advisors, or to faculty members, who might be able to provide some more help to the student. Really making this a cross department collaboration. I hear all the time from people, we are very siloed. We don't work very intensely with other offices, and surveys can be a good kind of opener into building those relationships and saying, hey, we're seeing a lot of students are struggling with this. Is this something that you can help with? And now I'm thinking about timing and automation. As I mentioned, the surveys in academia do have tools to make this more automated, but you want to be mindful about how you use those kinds of tools. So when it comes to check-in surveys, uh, asking questions like, "What are you hoping to accomplish today?" So that's a question that you're asking right when the student comes in. Um, and that could be something that they answer before they sit down with the tutor. The tutor takes a few minutes to review it, and maybe that helps them feel more helps them better prepare for the session with the student. So they are be able to tailor that session in real time. Same thing with checkout surveys, trying to get information that is more relevant for that time when the student is going to be asked to fill that out. And then thinking about delayed follow-ups. So surveys that go out after the student has already gone. um, I would recommend using more of a manual sending option for that case. That way you give the student a little bit of breathing room. You might try 24 to 72 hours later for outcome-based questions, or even 2 to 3 weeks later to kind of learn more about that long-term impact. Those questions like, are you still struggling in this course? And then milestone based. So after 5 visits is a decent amount of visits. What has changed for the students from the first visit to the fifth one, for example, or even 3 or 4 visits. After a missed appointment, that's a significant milestone. I know that a lot of centers, their budget is very limited, and their time for their tutors is very, very limited. Resources are limited, so they have to take missed appointments very, very seriously. But at the same time, hopefully the goal is to not just say, okay, well, they didn't show up and have that be the end of it. What prevented you from attending your appointment today? What can we do, what can be done differently in the future? Just trying to check in with them, even just checking in with them, letting them know, like, hey, we are here. We know that you planned to come in today, and we care about the fact that you didn't, and we care about you and your academic journey. Can often make a really big difference for the student. And then thinking about how to use the surveys beyond the tutoring centers. So most academia centers, I would say the majority, are tutoring centers or similar types of learning centers, academic coaching areas, things like that. But lots of academia users are not tutoring centers. So thinking about how to expand that and what types of areas could benefit from surveys. So using it as a campus-wide feedback engine. The sky really is the limit. Any area that is using academia can use surveys. So let's take a look at some different types of examples. I'll start with advising and career services and just some sample questions and ideas for that. So, after meeting with an advisor or a career advisor, an academic advisor, or a career advisor, do you feel clearer about your next steps? Do you know what the plan is from here? From here till the next time you meet. Tracking decision confidence after appointments is a really big deal. I can tell you, I've met with students before, especially earlier in my career, and a survey probably would have been a really good idea in a lot of cases where you're sitting down with a student and they aren't really that confident, and you want a way to actually quantify that, more, more concretely. And it's a shame when that happens, but you definitely want to know, like, okay, are students actually leaving our services with a clarity of purpose, with an idea of what they want to be doing, of what they need to be doing. And then any student success or retention offices, those are often kind of connected to tutoring centers, but not always. So any area where their goal is to increase a student's chance of success in general, or a student's chance of being retained. So we're thinking like an FYE or a TRIO program, using surveys to identify disengaged or overwhelmed students early, before it becomes much more than they can handle and before they spiral and just decide that they can't continue with their academic journey. Libraries. Libraries are a little tricky with Accudemia. Most libraries have their own cataloging program that they're using, but we do have libraries who use it for workshops, who use Accudemia for workshops and other things. So if you are a library that is using Accudemia, you can use the surveys for locations like your research help desks and workshops, to kind of get feedback for those services, and asking, were they able to find the resources that they needed? Did they get the help that they expected? Was the topic as relevant as they hoped it would be? So just trying to get feedback on that, separate from the normal library services that I understand are probably being tracked with another system. And also using it as a way to improve workshop offerings. One thing I hear from not just libraries, but any area offering workshops is they want to get more people in their workshops. This is a good way to say to students, like, hey, you know, we would love to get your feedback on what types of workshops you would like to see in our area, and what would make you, get sign up and get in the door, and what you would find most useful. Some other thoughts of other areas besides tutoring centers that could use surveys, counseling and wellness centers. Again, not so. Just to be clear, I mean non-clinical feedback only. Most of these areas have HIPAA in addition to FERPA rules, and we know that. But just trying to get like just basic non-clinical feedback, especially when it comes to things like workshops or group sessions, things where there's going to be, it's going to be more generic kind of feedback and not specific to the students' individual needs that need to be documented in a more secure environment, besides like a survey. Also, using these surveys to gather information about your program's effectiveness. IT help desks, likely they don't tend to have a lot of students coming in and out of them, but they can of course utilize surveys as a way to get feedback on tech support services, resolution effectiveness, time to fix satisfaction. And then finally, campus events and workshops. So we're talking like orientations, parent weekends, things like that. Just getting feedback on, what types of sessions did students have the ability to take advantage of, and which did they find the most useful. So now we'll get into a little bit about why you might want to consider doing a survey to your staff. So this is a little bit, it's interesting because we have a feature in Accudemia called session assessments, which I have sometimes kind of referred to as like a staff facing survey, but that's not quite what it is. It's not a survey to get the staff members feedback on aspects of their employment. It's specifically, that feature is for staff to give a report, a more formalized report on what actually went on in a session with a student. So if you're thinking more in terms of, I want to know like what my staff think of their jobs, what tools that they feel they need to do it more effectively, the survey would be a better fit for that. So asking them to give reflections post shift, questions like what challenges did you encounter today, this past week, this past month? Did you feel prepared for your sessions? Do you feel like when you came in, you knew what you were doing, you didn't struggle, there weren't a lot of moments where you kind of felt at a loss for words, and you felt like you navigated those moments well when you were stumped. Um, Getting an idea, using those surveys to get an idea of training effectiveness. After initial onboarding or any professional development workshops you have them do, especially if you're having them do any mandatory training for certification. And then, as a way to find a burnout or workload struggles, quick pulse surveys that are triggered weekly or regularly can kind of help you identify trends and potentially stop those problems before they start. I remember when I ran a tutoring center, uh, I had it was a peer tutoring center, and I lost a lot of good tutors very often because they just burned themselves out. These were by their very nature high achieving students, and when things got too hard, they understandably employment at the tutoring center was often the first thing to be offloaded. And I think back sometimes about how a survey that I did regular check-ins, but uh, more purposeful surveys could have really helped identify some problems and maybe find a solution to not lose tutors as often as unfortunately we did. And then not just those staff facing surveys. I don't want you to just think of them as good for your staff. Of course they are, but they're good for you too. They're good for the health of your center because they are helping you to improve your service quality and also helping you to justify your staffing and your resources, which, as we all know, is, especially today, really, really precious. And we want to make sure that we're showing data that shows that what we are doing is effective and helping students and the staff, especially if your staff are peer tutors and this job is seen not just as a job, but as a way to introduce them to the working world. Just a couple of more outside the box ideas. Thinking about micro assessments rather than a long list of questions. Just 1 to 2 question knowledge checks after each session. Just making sure students, whatever problem they came in to solve, can they solve it now? Showing actual learning gain. That can be a really, really easy way to say, like, hey, 70% of our students that we surveyed did say that they came in not knowing how to solve a problem and then were able to solve it. That to me shows, I would say more significant value than a lot of surveys that are just asking for a 1 through 5 satisfaction rating, which are good too. But we want to try to find better ways to kind of make these questions more worth the student's time and more effective for us. Any behavioral nudges after visit? Have you scheduled your next session? We want tutoring to be a habit. We want these services to be something that they utilize, not just when they are like drowning in work. We want it to be something that they are, that they see as like just a regular part of their academic life. In a lot of cases, is what I've heard from many centers. And of course, when we do something like that, when we're trying to get them to behave a certain way, we want to make it as easy as possible for them to actually follow through with that behavior. So the great thing about surveys is that you can add instructions within there that show them how to rebook their session. And then using the surveys to get some insights into equity and access. Was there anything that made accessing the service difficult? Trying to identify any sticking points for students that we might be able to help them with. And then with more outside the box ideas, a service design feedback loop. So again, like just one question rotated weekly. What's one thing we could improve? And some of the answers you're going to get are probably going to be okay, maybe not that helpful or maybe not realistic, but some of them could really be illuminating in finding like ways to improve your services for your particular population of students. This is a good way to create continuous improvement without falling into survey fatigue. One of the biggest things I hear from people thinking about doing surveys is students already get so many surveys. They get surveys from us, they get surveys from the school, like from other departments at the school. It's that we don't want to overload them with surveys, and that is a 100% valid concern. So just kind of like very, very quick micro assessments. What's one thing we could improve, or just whatever question is most important for you to get feedback on, emphasizing that instead of asking a lot of questions that they may or may not take the time to answer. And then using the information that they give you, you're gathering all this great data, hopefully, collecting quotes to actually show the impact of your services in the student's own words. This is not just helpful with getting more students to use your services, it's also helpful. You need to do things like justify funding, and then trying to find some predictive engagement signals. This is always tricky. There's not necessarily one, definitive indicator that a student is going to stay engaged in school or not. But this is just another tool in your toolbox to help you gather data that you can combine with things like your actual quantitative data, like what actually, what are students doing, and then what are the sentiments that are coming out of what they are doing. And this is also a good way to help you flag high usage and low confidence. So if a student is coming in quite often, are they, but are they really improving? And being able to connect those dots a little better can help you make more targeted outreach to those students. And then finally, I want to talk about reducing survey fatigue, because I've thrown a lot of ideas at you, and a lot of folks are probably thinking, I can't do all that. And I would not expect you to do all this. Again, every center, every school is different. I would say some of the best ways to encourage students to actually use your surveys, keep them short, 1 to 3 questions at most. Rotate questions. Again, you can run surveys more than once, and that might work best for you, but you can also consider running multiple surveys and having them rotate those closed questions, so that the students aren't answering the same ones over and over again. Mix quick ratings with an occasional deeper surveys. Once you've had a student fill out a very quick survey, they might be more amenable to giving more detailed feedback in a follow-up. Thinking beyond overall the survey as a tool is a way to understand what actually changes for your students after they use your services. And I thought that was such a great idea, because it's not just like a thing that we do that the students don't really want to do, and that we, feel awkward asking them for. This is a really powerful way to explore. And I always tell clients, Accudemia can help you identify so many great points of quantitative data, the time in, the time out, what they selected, and other factors about them. Qualitative data is trickier because it requires the student or the tutor that they worked with to take the time to actually sit down and respond to these questions. But the data can be so valuable that it's not really it's not always feasible to just say, oh, we're not going to do it, but you want to balance it against your likelihood of getting those questions answered. All right, so I have gabbed enough. I am going to hand it over to a few different Accudemia users. Let me make sure that they are all here with us today. Hi, Don. Okay, so I'll have you go first. What can you tell us about how Kilgore College uses those surveys in Accudemia?
Well, we use it for our exit survey from having a session. And it's 5 questions long, multiple choice, just to give us an idea of whether they were required by their instructor to come or not. And then which mode they chose to do, whether it was, in person or on the phone or type chat or whatever. And then whether their teacher brought them to sometimes we have orientations and class feedback, when they do their peer reviews, they'll come in and have us help them monitor the peer reviews. Um, so anyway, just whether that was the case for the session, um, and then what they covered in the session.
Mhm.
We have multiple choice um, issues for that, and then we have one comment that's open text for the fifth question that says, was there anything that we could do better, or whether you have suggestions for the session or any comments.
Awesome. So have you been able to use that data that you've collected in those surveys in any, excuse me, in any meaningful ways?
It helps us to know whether they've come in for specific help from their instructor as far as if they were required to come, whether we needed to follow up with the instructor or whatever for that. And what else here? The percentages of students who come. For instance, we're having many more students who are dual credit students now. So they can only either phone in or do a type chat session with us. So we keep up with how those percentages are changing. And the supervisor for the center reports that weekly to the vice president that she reports to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dawn. That was really helpful. I we have a couple other speakers, and I know that our tech team is going to be presenting as well. So let me get to our other speakers. Thank you so much, Dawn, for your time for telling us about how
Man,
surveys are used at Kilgore College. Let me see if Becca is unmuted or around yet. Becca, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi,
Can you-
Becca. What can you tell us about how you use surveys at Creighton?
Yes, so we have four different types of tutoring services here for predominantly our undergraduate population. And the key role that our surveys really serve as is to really get a gist of the student experience using those different services, especially since we provide multiple modalities of tutoring for students. So we have our typical one-on-one appointment based. We also have drop-in and then also attached tutoring, which is the embedded tutoring model with an extra drop-in feature there. So we really want to compare how students are using these services, what they find most helpful about them, and then also the quality of the tutoring experience to see does this really make a difference in that student's learning
Mhm.
experience. And then we also use the surveys for supplemental instruction. So the survey questions for the first three services are generally the same, but for supplemental instruction, we really want to see how our nursing students, who are the only ones using SI, why they attend SI. So it can be exam prep, clarifying lecture concepts, developing study skills, or improving their course grade, all of which are outcomes for the SI model. How the SI leader creates a supportive or positive environment, the plan that they have for the session, and then also how they can apply those learning strategies in other classes. So we really want to see how impactful SI is on the development of the student that's different than typical content-based tutoring.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, oh,
No,
go
I was
ask.
saying that's awesome. So is SI only available for nursing, or is that just the majority of the students, the majority of the students who take advantage of SI?
That is specifically for our nursing students. So it's for mostly nursing coded courses, but then there's also other courses that are not nursing specific that other students will use. So physiology and anatomy, we have OT and PT students who take those classes, but they're predominantly nursing attended. And those classes just have those, it's a floodgate class or gate holder class because it's a most of them are first year entry level classes, but they have high needs and more difficult course concepts that we found that SI better serves aside from typical tutoring.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. Anything else?
I would also say I don't know if this is categorized as a survey or if it's a separate thing, but the session assessments, we also require that our one-on-one tutors who are working with students on that one-on-one basis complete a session assessment to give that other of this. We have the snapshot of what students are taking away from the session, but also what are our tutors observing. So in those, we ask what kind of strategies they use to work with students. So what works best, the teach back, verbal explanation from the student method seems to be the highest ranking, but then also the observed learning and understanding of students from the tutor perspective. And then also you mentioned referrals to other campus services. So did the student need additional follow-up from an academic coach because it's not content-based support they need, it's actual time management, study strategies and skills. And then I have my lead tutors in that leadership position review those daily to see any of those red flags. And even if there weren't any referrals made based on the notes by the tutor, does additional follow-up need to happen?
I love that. Yeah, so the session assessments is a different feature. It uses a very similar interface, but it just kind of the data goes into a different bucket and it's meant to be used in a different way. So I talked a little bit earlier about how to use surveys more effectively for staff to fill out, but I think that would be different than the session assessments. But I'm very glad to hear that you are utilizing those as well.
Awesome.
The more data that you can collect, the better. And if your students and your staff are amenable to actually filling that out, again, the better. You're getting a lot of great data there. Thank you so much, Becca. That was really, really great.
Of course.
Okay, Marie, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Hi, Marie. Hi.
So how's it going?
Good. How's it going with you?
It's going wonderful. Do you mind if I share my screen?
Yeah, let me go ahead and make you the presenter. So Marie
Absolutely.
is
Thank
from
you.
Southeastern Louisiana University, and she's going to share a little bit about how they use surveys, and then we'll move on to the tech support folks.
All right, so what I do, I use 3 different types of surveys. I have one in the very beginning of the session before a student ever checks in, and they complete this survey, and I'll show you what that one is. So to set up your survey, simply just go to administration, your center management, and then surveys. You will see I have a ton of surveys, and it has from years past. They're very, very easy to make. You can clone them from semester to semester. The first one I want to show you is, let me get more rows. Our agreement form. So we do an agreement form when students come for their very first session. They have to fill out this agreement form. Let me show you it real quick. And in this form, we just kind of say, this is the role and responsibility. Hang on, make sure you can see this one. It's better. So in this screen, it talks about being prepared for the session, being on time. We also give our attendance policy. It's not letting me show you the one what I want y'all to see. I'm sorry. It gives us the attendance policy, the 3 no-show policy. Students have to check this. I know it's like reading a syllabus. They all check, yes, I read the syllabus, and then of course they don't really read it. But I have this for me, and my students have it. We make a copy of this survey, and then we have it where my tutors can have to have difficult conversations. So we had a client, particularly this semester, who was not going to class and was just using the tutoring session as their class time. And so they use this survey. It gives them that black and white right here. This is the rules. You need to be going to class and all that. So we do this. This survey shows up the one time, the very first time that they're ever in our center, and they'll never see it again. Our next survey that we use is we do something called a quick session agreement, our quick survey. And so in this quick survey, it's basically 3 questions, and it's basically, hey, how was your session? Good, bad, or okay? And if you want to leave a comment, you can. What I like about that is then we now take that data. So you can see this. So we take this information. You can see our good and our bad. We only have, I think, maybe 2 bads. But then I take this information. I can compile it. I like to see sort of like a 96, 97% good rating. But then what we do with it is that we take it and go and look a step further. And what is this one particular tutor? How is she doing? So this tutor had 50 sessions where someone filled it out. 48 were good, 2 were okay. The student had no bads, and we gave the percentage of good versus okay. And I go over this information with them in the fall. So before every semester, I meet with all of my tutors, going over their schedules, what they're going to be tutoring, and then also these surveys. So this is a very quick survey. It is done after every single session when the clients leave. The other survey that we have is this one. Okay, so in this survey, this one comes out every 6 times that a client is there. I have all the names, I have the tutor's name, but I just have all that pulled off right now. And it's more so looking at what's going on with my tutoring. So we're asking, did your tutoring session begin with clear goals? Are you engaged? Is the tutoring, are they questioning you in order to understand? We don't want to just be like, hey, here are the answers. We want them to figure it out. We want to kind of help lay those breadcrumbs. We also talk about our environment here. What is it like here? They give us a ranking. Did my staff in the front office, did they engage you when you came in? Did they engage you when you left? So what is it about the environment here of the Tenzi Learning Center? And then anything that you want to give back in terms of feedback for our tutors. I use this survey, and as well as the quick survey, many times when I'm writing my letters of recommendations for my students. A lot of my students will be going to medical school or professional school. I use this data. I'm like, hey, look, this is some of the things that some of the students have said about my tutors. And so I appreciate this. This data is also used for our university. We have to report to, it's called Weave, and I have to report this information. So this 1 through 6 was not my numbering system. It was my predecessors. I just have never changed it, but I can report this, and I also report to the university about when they say how was your session, is the tutoring process effective, and you can see this. And I can go even further down. It's around here somewhere, so let me just find it. But then we compile this information even further. I'm sorry, I must not have it, but I have like graphs that show each column and all on this. I love the surveys. They're very easy for us to use. I will take them from Accudemia and save them into a Google Sheet, just because that's how I document what's going on each semester, and I have that easy access to it. But the surveys are wonderful, especially that survey in the very beginning, like, these are our rules. I put the cheating policy, what is considered cheating. That is extremely beneficial. So that way, clients can come in and lie and say, no, this is not a graded assignment, but you were asked, is this a graded assignment? So we just have a little bit more data to help support us in case there's a case of cheating that appears.
I love that. I love that. And so some of those lines of feedback I'm seeing there, they melt my heart. They're beautiful.
My students love seeing this. They'll be able to read all of this when they meet back with me. So they love seeing this information.
I love it.
I also use this information. So, like, for example, in my quick survey, one of the clients he wanted to come more. I was able to use that information to reach out to that client, say, hey, listen, we can get you to come in more. The computer restricts them to 4 visits, but if I have a tutor that's not being used, we went and override Accudemia so that we could let that student register for more classes. So I also use the surveys to do immediate, fixing a problem before letting go all semester long.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Marie. That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for participating in that.